Hi, my name is Vesna Varzic. In this presentation, I will talk about language shift and language maintenance in the community. We will start by defining language shift and language maintenance. Then, we will discuss ethnolinguistic vitality theory and language shift, language attitudes, minority and minoritized languages, two social contexts for language shift, the possibility of predicting language shift, and finally, factors supporting language maintenance. Language shift is a process involving a gradual replacement of one's own language, often labeled L1, by another language, usually referred to as L2, in all spheres of usage. It happens across different social domains of language use and language functions. Eventually, the L1 or minority or heritage language is replaced by the L2 or majority or dominant language in all uses and functions. Usually, language shift takes a few or more generations to be complete. In contrast to language shift, which is the gradual replacement of a community's language by another language, language maintenance is the continued use or retention of an L1, a minority or heritage language, in one or more spheres of language use over an extended period of time. Now, let us discuss the social factors which influence language use in minority language communities in a multilingual social context. Ethnolinguistic vitality theory is a socio-psychological theory which aims to explain a group's linguistic behavior in terms of its ethnolinguistic vitality. Ethnolinguistic vitality is defined as that which makes a group likely to behave as a distinctive and active collective entity in intergroup situations. The proposal is that the higher the ethnolinguistic vitality of the group, the more likely it is to maintain its language and resist language shift. The variables that describe a group's ethnolinguistic vitality are sets of various social factors. The first set of variables is status. Status variables include the economic, social, socio-historical, and language status of a group within or outside the community. The second set of variables is demography. Demographic variables are those related to the number and distributional patterns of ethnolinguistic group members throughout a particular region or national territory. Demographic variables also include birth rate, rate of outgroup marriages, and immigration and emigration patterns. The third set of variables is institutional support. These factors refer to the extent to which a language group enjoys formal and informal representation and support in the various institutions of a society, in particular in mass media, education, government services, industry, religion, culture, and politics. Ethnolinguistic vitality of a group is evaluated as low, medium, or high. For example, a group with high ethnolinguistic vitality and a low likelihood for language shift could be numerous and concentrated in a particular territory, with not much immigration into it or emigration outside of it, have a strong local economy, have social prestige extended to its language, have institutional support reflected in the use of its language in education and the mass media, as well as in the local culture and work life. In addition to a group's objective ethnolinguistic vitality, the group's subjective perception of its own vitality is also important. In fact, researchers claim that the subjective ethnolinguistic vitality is as essential a factor in language shift as the objective ethnolinguistic vitality. The language attitudes or beliefs toward language and dispositions to react favorably or unfavorably toward it. The mainstream society and the minority group may view the minority language favorably or unfavorably, and both the outsider and the insider attitudes toward it will affect the likelihood of language shift. Often, minority languages are devalued or stigmatized by the larger society and or a minority group itself, which leads to language shift. Most minority languages are also socially minoritized. Minoritized languages are languages of communities that are socially marginalized and sociopolitically and culturally unequal and powerless. They are typically used in a restricted number of social domains. Also, one-way bilingualism, a situation where minority group members speak the dominant language, but the members of the dominant society are monolingual, pertains in minoritized language communities. Even languages spoken by majorities can be minoritized, as shown by the case of indigenous languages under colonial rule, and still many languages in post-colonial settings. According to the social context and community history, there are two main social settings in which language shift can and usually does take place. The first is the migrant setting. The second is the territorial minority setting. Migrant settings relate to groups which migrated to other countries in the recent past, speak a heritage language, and are marked by transitional bilingualism. Language shift in such settings is rather swift and often happens in 3 generations. Members of the first generation of migrants are predominantly monolingual in the heritage language. Members of the second generation of migrants are bilingual in the heritage language and the dominant language of the society. In the third generation of migrants, language shift happens, and the members of this generation are predominantly monolingual in the majority or dominant language. Territorial minority settings are related to groups which are linguistic minorities with a long history in a particular territory, living in nation states, speaking a minority language. They are marked by stable bilingualism or the use of the minority language alongside the dominant language of the society over several generations. Language shift in these settings is usually gradual, but leads to language endangerment and language deaths if the minority language is not spoken in any other territory. Unfortunately, there is no predictive model of language shift, which is characterized by a complex interplay of many different socio-historical factors, which makes it impossible to predict which single factor or exact constellation of factors would always lead to language shift and or language maintenance. Still, let us mention some factors that most researchers agree encourage language maintenance: demographic density and isolation in territorial minority settings, a connection with or travel to home community in migrant settings, minority language as a medium of instruction in schools, minority language use in the media and literature, existence of minority language community institutions, minority language as a strong symbol of identity, a positive sense of subjective ethnolinguistic vitality in the community and strong group identity, etc. In conclusion, bilingual or multilingual communities often stop using their minority languages under great social pressure to do so. Attitudes toward languages are critical factors in the process of language shift. Language shift can be slowed down or avoided with a change in policies and language and social attitudes. The ability to use one's language in all areas of life is a human right. Thank you for listening.